with this lesson, we're going to focus on percents and fractions, and we've got three quick objectives. First of all, write a percent as a fraction, and we know that we can always simplify fractions. Go backward, take a fraction and write it as a percent, and of course, use a visual model for both. There are several skills that we expect you to already have before you launch into this. First of all, you should know how to simplify a fraction. You should know how to write a visual model for a fraction, and you can convert improper fractions to mixed numbers, and you have to know how to divide. All of those skills are tools that we'll use to start off like this. Write your percent as a fraction in its simplest form. Really, really straightforward. If you want to turn a percent into a fraction, it's nothing more than taking your number and putting it over 100. That will get you the fraction. It does not get you simplest form. We know that this is a piece that we'd be able to divide out. And if we divide it by 10, we'd get 4 over 10. Simplifying further, we could divide by 2, giving you the simplified form 2/5. There, we're done. 62.5. Again, you can take any percent and put it over 100. That gets you the fraction. And in some of our earlier work where we're using calculators, we would just use this form for the calculator. However, we need to simplify this. And here's where our task comes into play. We have a decimal. Simplified fractions never have a decimal. Well, what we would need to do is we could multiply by 10. And when we multiply by 10, we know it moves the decimal over to be 625 and then 1,000. Okay, so from here we can continue to simplify it. If we divided these by 25, divided by 25 would give us 25 over 40. And of course, that can be simplified further. Dividing by 5 again gives us 5 over 8. And there we've reached the end. 5/8 is our simplified fraction. 66 2/3 of a percent. Well, this is one that I'm just going to point out. I'm going to go through and show you how to do it, but ultimately this is one that's so common that, and the work is kind of so weird. It really is easier if you simply remember this as the fraction 2/3. Memorizing it is easier than doing all the arithmetic to get there. I'll still show you how to do it, but frankly, you'll save time by memorizing it. Our techniques are still the same. 66 2/3 over 100. Well, simplified fractions don't have a fraction inside a fraction. So the next piece we would have to do is to multiply and add to turn that into an improper fraction. 66 times 3 would equal, that's 198. 198 plus 2 gives you 200, so that's the fraction 200 over 3, all over 100. That could be put over 1. And since we are then looking at 200 over 3 divided by 100 over 1, we know that can be rewritten as 200 over 3 multiplied by its reciprocal, 1 over 100, and then multiplying straight across our numerator, straight across the denominator. 200 times 1 equals 200. 3 times 100 for the denominator is 300. And then we can divide out to simplify, and we get our final answer 2/3. You tell me, which way would you rather do it? Do you want to go through all of this work or memorize that? Generally speaking, students prefer to memorize 1/3, 2/3 at 66 2/3. Generally speaking, they choose to memorize 33 1/3 is the fraction 1/3. Because the fractions 1/3 and 2/3 are so common, we'll use them so frequently, and it's so much work to do it by hand, A lot of times people memorize it just to speed it up and make it easier for themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, write the fraction as a percent. Well, there are different ways of doing this. And the main one that we are going to focus on is using the proportion method. There is also a decimal method, which we'll focus on and actually use with our next lesson. But in this video, we're going to focus on the proportion method. The percent that we're looking for, we can solve this. And we've seen earlier in the year that how to solve a proportion. We know that we can cross multiply 25 times our variable will equal the other one, 2 times 100. Simply dividing out by 25 then gives us our final answer. 2 over 25, well, 200 divided by 25 equals 8. So it's 8%. We're done. There is, of course, a decimal method. We'll do that one with future lesson. But right now we're emphasizing the proportion method, focusing on fractions instead of focusing on decimals. 4 over 5 is some percent out of 100. Well, you can use cross multiplying. That was one of our tools that we used for solving. You could also use equivalent ratios. What do you multiply by to turn 5 into 100? You have to multiply by 20. So, multiplying the same times 20 on top, 4 times 20 equals 80. It's 80%. I will admit, I prefer this method because there's so little writing. Some students prefer this one, some students prefer cross multiplying. You get to choose which one you want to do. What about 3 over 8? 3 over 8 is some percent out of 100. Which way do you want to do it? Okay, using cross multiplying then, 8 times p, 8p. 3 times 100, 300. Divide out by 8. And even if you're going to use a calculator, 300 divided by 8, that will equal 37.5. So we have 37.5%. Done. What about here? What fraction is this? Okay, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've shaded 4 out of 10. And we know that this is a piece that we could simplify. There's our fraction, 2 over 5. What about here? 3 shaded out of 4. There we go. And this fraction, 2 shaded out of 5. And lastly, we'd want to be able to solve some word problems. 16 of the 25 people in the junior class are taking Hidatsa. Okay, 16 of 25. What percent is that? 16 of the 25 juniors, and we want to know what percent is this, knowing that percents are out of 100. So how do you want to solve the proportion? I think this is one where we could use the equivalent rates pretty quickly. What do you multiply by to turn 25 into 100? Times 4. So 16 times 4, doing the same thing in our numerator. 14 times 4 equals 64. So there we go. 64% of the junior class is taking Hidatsa. And we're done. Noting, of course, that our standards are, we want to be able to write a visual model, solve word problems, and most importantly, we want to convert back and forth between fractions being turned into percents and percents being turned into fractions. Converting back and forth between the two are the primary skill that we're working on.